Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Cameron and I'm here with Aner, and we're here to chat about No Name Recon. So let's start with the basics. Aner, tell us, what is No Name Recon?
No Name Recon is the new product that we've launched, and Recon stands for reconnaissance, which is the first stage that an attacker takes when they're looking at an environment they would like to attack. And what the No Name Recon product does is that it mimics the exact same actions an attacker would have taken when they looked at this environment, and then it surfaces all these risks and all these vulnerabilities maybe that an attacker would have found. Now, this product adds to our existing API security suite, and I believe it's a really important addition to the suite.
Well, that's awesome. So you mentioned API security, so let's talk about that in context first. Why has API security shot to the top of the priority list for seemingly every CISO?
So I think it's a really interesting question, and I believe the answer to this question is like only getting stronger and stronger every day. So what happened in the past few years, or maybe even several years, is that APIs became the center of the digital world. APIs runs everything that we do. APIs are in charge of operating everything from digital transactions, from funds transactions, anything you do with your bank, everything you're doing with your smart devices, everything is APIs today. Mm-hmm. And since everything is APIs, our dearest data and our most important operations are controlled by APIs. Now, what did not evolve as fast as APIs is API security. And then we have this gap that organizations have thousands and tens of thousands of APIs, but they have no API security posture. They have no understanding of how many APIs they have or what data they're handling, and are those authenticated? Now, you take this together with the fact that an API or a leaky API can lead to like huge data loss or huge data leakage from an organization. Way more than on an unpatched server sometimes, mm-hmm. which can be just any server, not the dearest server organization. And then you get this understanding that, oh my God, I have this huge treasure for an attacker to take advantage of, and I have no lines of defense.
That's really interesting. It does seem like APIs are such a critical piece of everything digital today. So given that importance, how should companies think about securing their APIs?
So the way we're looking at it at No Name is that API security has four main pillars to it. And it's funny to mention Recon in that sense because it adds to each and every one of those. But essentially, it starts with discovery. So I have to know what APIs I have in order to know what data they're handling, are those authenticated or not, and do I have any vulnerabilities in the servers that are serving these APIs or in the APIs themselves. This is super important as a first stage. And this discovery is something that is very similar to asset management when you're talking about your cloud servers or anything at all that you want to have an asset management for in the digital world or in generally any environment an organization will have. And the second stage would be API security posture. So like posture management for APIs is same for cloud security posture management and data security posture management, because essentially if I don't control what's my security posture for my APIs, I don't control what's my security posture for my cloud or my data. So it's kind of the center of all of those. Then I have API security testing. So if I'm looking at API security, I want to make sure that I'm not just waiting for any type of mistake, any type of misconfiguration, any type of basically a risk that is introduced by my APIs to reach production. I want to do it before that. I want to do the shift left approach and kind of find these risks beforehand. And this is what active testing is about. It's about test your APIs to anything at all which might become a risk later in the process. Do that while you develop. Mm-hmm. Do that every commit, do that every build, do that every nightly. That's what active testing is about. And then we of course have runtime security. So whenever I have deployed my APIs, I know my security posture, I know which APIs I have Then, if an attacker is reaching to my APIs, trying to throw any type of attacks at those, whether those are targeted or just, it can be any type of a known vulnerability, maybe to the server, I want to know about it and I want to stop it. I want to be able to block the attacker, and that's what runtime security is about.
Yeah, very interesting. So it's really a comprehensive approach to securing APIs. Let's start with the basics here. You mentioned that the first part was discovery. I think it's pretty clear to a lot of people what discovery is in the general sense, but focusing on recon and reconnaissance specifically, what is the role of reconnaissance in a cybersecurity context?
So I think when you're looking at discovery of APIs and you're looking at reconnaissance in the API security context, what we're looking at is two main things. The first thing is what APIs an attacker can look at, can see in my organization when they're looking from the outside. So what APIs might be exposed, what API documentation might be leaking or may have leaked whenever. It can be 5 months ago, it can be a year ago, but still up to date. And then you have other types of leakage which might be relevant in the discovery sense. So it's like I'm discovering where I'm exposed, and I'm also discovering what APIs are, let's say, internet facing and maybe pose a risk to the organization, because an attacker look at those as okay, here's a way I could get in. Mm-hmm. So that's a two-way we're looking at it from the Recon perspective.
So thinking about organizations and who would be thinking about reconnaissance and who Recon is designed to help, tell us a bit about that. Who are some of the people in an organization that really benefit from Recon?
So it starts with the security, of course. So the security organization will benefit from Recon because they will get a notification or an alert for basically a vulnerability or a leakage of credentials, it could be, or it could be a leakage of APIs documentation, or it can be some sort of vulnerabilities in a customer-facing server. Just the same way they would have got it from, let's say, a SOC, but when someone is already taking advantage of it. So they will benefit because we're looking at it before an attacker is taking advantage of it, and then they can go and remediate the risk and take down, if we have a GitHub repository that is exposing something to the internet that it shouldn't, for example, API keys or access keys to a cloud environment. So these things, when you're trying to tackle it, when you already have an event going on, that's very hard. You have to find it, you have to realize, okay, what's going on, where did they find this? And when you have it beforehand, you get it as an alert, okay, here's something, we don't have anyone taking advantage of it that we know, let's kind of take it down from the repository, let's make sure that this website is off the internet because it's exposing something through the front end, and then the security team can tackle that slowly and in the right way, to say it this way. Now, of course, it then benefits the entire organization, because when the security does things slowly, gradually, responsibly, then you don't have an impact to the business. You don't have to take the entire website down because you don't know where the leak is. You don't have to take the entire repo down or to slow down dev because you don't know where the leakage is. That's another benefit. And when you benefit the business, then of course it benefits a couple of different departments in the organization.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it seems like a big piece of it is shifting their security posture in the general sense from being very reactive to being very proactive and getting ahead of more of the issues. So how does Recon actually work? What is it doing, and how does it find these issues that you mentioned?
So Recon is the mimic of the exact same actions an attacker would have taken. So an attacker would have looked for credentials which has leaked to the internet and may be relevant to try and activate some of the APIs that are internet facing. So Recon will search the internet for those. the attacker would look for these credentials in all these different assets that they have around the internet, whether those are some archived websites, repositories all around the internet, and etc. Like there are like a lot of different angles in which Recon is looking for these type of issues. Then, of course, we have not just credentials, but I need to know which APIs are exposing the internet and how to activate those. So I need to have some kind of specs. How do an attacker find specs? They're searching for unauthenticated access to all these different APIs or API endpoints, and those should many times be authenticated. Sometimes in the dev environment, it's open. Sometimes in the staging environment, it's open. So Recon would search for each and every environment where it might be open to the internet, when such leakage might have happened, and then it finds it. Now, I don't want to go into too much into the weeds here, but there are some techniques in which Recon then combines these different findings, and then it will surface the risk as. So combining these three issues, we could, like, we as an attacker, as a simulation of an attacker, we could have gone to full control of a domain of the environment. And these are some things that we're seeing in real life environments in our customers. And I believe that the impact that we're seeing that Recon has on our customers is like, oh my God, how did I not see this? How did I not have any tool that can surface these type of challenges, these type of risks of my organization? And I believe it starts with API security, but it's not just API security, because it's API security posture, but then sometimes it gets to some other places, because an API, as we said, APIs run the world. So an API can lead to full control of a server, it can lead to full control of an environment, and so on, and then have, of course, huge impact on the business.
So it's not just one aspect of a potential attack, it's a way into so many other kinds of attacks, so many other vulnerabilities that an organization has, because APIs are so pervasive. And so it's probably also something that organizations only think of when it comes to application security, but it really does permeate the entire business, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, it affects cloud, it affects other types of environment where keys might be leaking, where documentation might be leaking, where you might leak sensitive data that then can serve an attacker. So even if I have a list of keys or a list of identifiers, it might seem like it has no impact to the business. But if I'm an attacker and I found this API which is unauthenticated, but I have to find the UUIDs to try and like kind of get the sensitive data of the users, like try and get through 32 bytes or 64 bytes UUIDs, well, that can take like a decade. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do that. If I have a leakage of even these UUIDs and what they're serving, that can have an impact on the organization. And sometimes when you look at it with like a wider angle, and you look at this from the perspective of an attacker, you realize what type of impact it might have on your business, what type of impact it might have on the organization.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I guess it's so true, as you pointed out, that APIs really make almost everything digital possible. So given that, I guess it really does make sense why CISOs have security at the top of their list. Well, it's super cool that we've come out with this, and it's really great to see how it's helping our customers. Aner, any other closing thoughts before we wrap up?
So I believe I've mentioned like the vast majority of things that are very interesting to say about Recon, but I think the super interesting about Recon is when you see it in action. So I believe if like this interview that we're doing now is reaching a large audience, and they're like looking at it and thinking like, where am I exposed? I think the best way to do it will be like reach out to No Name and find out where you're exposed using Recon, because it really has no dependency on any integration, on anything at all that involves any of the teams for doing regular discovery or regular runtime or poster security. It's just we have the domains, we know where to look for and what to look for, and you get the results. So this is why it's so simple, and this is why it's so powerful.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. The time to value really is awesome. And our customers are finding issues very quickly and fixing those issues really quickly. Well, this has been great. Thank you, Aner, and thank you all for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more information about No Name Recon and how to help you stay ahead of attackers, check out nonamesecurity.com/recon and request a demo today. Thanks all.